Welcome back to the video series about the life of Shakyamuni Buddha. In the previous episode, we heard that after Venerable Kyūdai returned to announce the news, the Buddha held a meeting of the monks and chose 500 monks. Let's go back to Kapilavatthu. Meanwhile, the activities at Truklam were assigned to other monks. The Buddha's alms-begging group departed in a joyful atmosphere, but the journey lasted nearly 2 months due to having to stop to preach and beg for alms. Before arriving at Kapilavatthu, Venerable Kalodai and a number of bhikkhus who had attained arahantship welcomed the Buddha with joy. Upon arriving, the Buddha decided to stay temporarily at Nigrodharma, where there were many ancient trees. King Suddhodana and the court came to welcome him, but some elders still maintained an arrogant attitude. Buddha met his father, the king, showing respect and affection. He used supernatural powers to prove his nobility, making King Suddhodana realize that his son had become an enlightened being. The Buddha preached the dharma on the path of practice and cause and effect, causing many people to realize it. He then went out to beg for alms according to tradition, explaining that this did not hurt the royal family but showed equality among people. King Suddhodana finally understood and invited Buddha to his palace. Here the Buddha met Yasodhara, his old wife, and they reviewed memories together, showing their deep affection and mutual understanding over many lifetimes. Finally, the Buddha and the monks were invited to the royal palace to receive food. The Life of Shakyamuni Buddha, Volume 31. The next day, the news that Prince Siddhartha had become a Buddha spread throughout the city, caves and alleys. He is leading an assembly of 500 monks to visit the capital and their long-lost relatives. It was he who opened up a new path, a religion without gods. And every person, regardless of class, can become a Buddha if they know how to pray, make efforts, and practice according to his eightfold path. King Suddhodana, now having attained the state of Sodaham, wanted to glorify the reputation of the outstanding son of the Sakya clan, so he widely announced to all Kapilavatthu people to organize a solemn welcome tomorrow. In addition to decorating the city, the road from Nigrodharma Park to the royal palace must be tidied up and clean. Then we have to hang flags and make cheerful and bustling flowers. The king's new guests were invited, about several thousand people, all of whom were notables, intellectuals, and eyes and ears of the capital. While the Buddha and the group of monks were moving orderly, solemnly, and quietly, step by step towards the royal palace, people were already lining the streets. They were both curious and respectfully clasped their hands because of the bright doubt, the leisurely sangha, and the pure steps of the Buddha and the group of monks. Somewhere there were shouts of joy. Somewhere there is a whisper that in this religion, monks with clean beards and hair, dignified robes and bowls, and dignified appearance seem to be noble, cultured, and educated. Awake! King Suddhodana wanted to set an example for everyone, so he walked barefoot to welcome the Buddha and the monks outside the palace gate. The elders, officials, royal family, and guests must all imitate and do the same. The seats and tents have been prepared in the courtyard of the main hall. When the Buddha and the monks had taken their prepared seats, the king said a few words to the guests, especially among them a number of Brahmin monks, famous scholars, and prestigious figures, that today the royal family places an offering bowl to the Buddha and the monks, hoping that this blessing will bring happiness and peace to all of us and to the whole country. The king personally put food into a bowl for the Buddha, and hundreds of attentive and thoughtful servants sharing their work. The Buddha and the monks ate in silence. The king, royal family, and all guests also quietly ate food afterward. During the Dharma session that day, the Buddha preached the Four Noble Truths very sublimely, but he went from the causes, the reasons, why he had previously given up everything to become a monk in search of enlightenment. The limitation of human life by birth, old age, illness, and death, the harshness of the law of impermanence has destroyed and swept away all youth, dreams, and empty achievements on earth. That truth, dukkha, is no exception. Nothing lasts long. There's nothing to grasp. The so-called joy, satisfaction, pleasantness, and pleasure through position, power, fame, and the 5 desires are always accompanied by imperfection, dissatisfaction, brokenness, sadness, pain, and anxiety. The The path of enlightenment and awakening that he discovered does not lull people to some blissful world in the future, nor does it hide in the shadow of the power of some gods hoping to be protected by them. Reward. As a wise person in this teaching, one must look through the fog of Maya to clearly see the cause of that dukkha. All forms of rituals, sacrifices, prayers, spells, mantras are just sedatives that can never completely cure all suffering and afflictions. All sects inside and outside the tradition are lost in theism, spiritualism, rationalism, nominalism, idealism. The other is lost in materialism, reality, aesthetics, realism, and empiricism. Without the illusion of gods, it is nihilism. If you don't fall into superstition or evil paths, you will also fall into asceticism or extreme sensual pleasures. No one, anywhere, has enough courage to look at themselves, introspect to clearly see the entire operation of their body and mind. Why? What is the cause that greed, anger, ignorance, jealousy, envy, sadness, hatred arise? Why? What is the cause of tears, suffering, disappointment, despair that withers the green shoots of life? The path of enlightenment, awakening, is established from that awareness and seeks the path to end all suffering, all dukkha, internal, external, gross or subtle from this realm or another. And that path Tathagata has found. That path is the contemplation of dependent origination, the impersonal nature of all dharmas. That path is awareness in every breath, every step. That path is to see reality as your eyes see and ears hear. And don't get swept away or immersed in illusions and hallucinations that do not exist. Relaxation, peace, coolness, no worries, no troubles will come to those who live a life of mindfulness and awareness. Mindfulness and awareness are the path to step out of Maya, dukkha. Currently, Tathagata and his assembly are walking on that path, and everyone can taste the taste of liberation, of the immortal Dharma. However, not everyone can follow that route. Tathagata's teachings are specifically formulated for monks and lay people. If you become a monk, practice the precepts of concentration and wisdom, follow the path of virtue, and you can achieve enlightenment and liberation right here and now. The lay precepts include giving alms, maintaining precepts, and practicing mindfulness, to have true joy and a smile of liberation in life with daily activities. But we must walk with our own feet, with our own efforts, self-knowledge and self-awareness. Don't be a slave to any god or god, but don't be a slave to the good traditions left over from ancient times. Our peaceful and carefree footsteps, here and now, are the path. There is no other way. Tathagata declared so. The path is also our peaceful and leisurely steps, here and now. Don't walk in the middle of nothingness. Walk under the shadows of gods, and don't step out of the earth. Remember that. What unheard thoughts entered the minds of the Brahmins and the guests? Some people are miserable. Some people are shocked. Some people seem to see things. Some people seem to have just stepped out of the chaotic fog. Some people feel like their minds are suddenly enlightened. There is something sparkling in their eyes. So the Buddha's teachings were like a breath of new life blowing through the ancient capital of Kapilavatthu. Many people have attained stream-entering results. Many people ask to take refuge in the three jewels. Then, starting from noon that day, the Buddha was constantly busy with visitors, at the royal palace as well as at Nigrodharma Park. The intimate princes of the past, such as Ananda, Bhatia, Mahanama, Kimbala, Anuruddha, Bhagu, both Nanda and Sundri Nanda, came to visit, but he did not have time to talk much. Seeing that the accommodation and living facilities at the park were too lacking, they mobilized workers and materials to make cups, lecture halls, cafeterias, guest houses, and other buildings to make offerings to the Buddha. Buddha and Sangha. While the work was underway, on the third day, the royal palace held three important ceremonies at once: marriage, investiture, and inauguration of a new palace for Prince Nanda. While everyone was busy bringing offerings to congratulate them, suddenly, the Buddha appeared at noon. Tathagata also came to congratulate, wishing happiness and peace to everyone. King and Queen Gautami hurriedly prepared a seat and offered him food. The Buddha silently ate the food. When everything was finished, he gave the bowl to Prince Nanda and walked away without saying anything. Because he respected his brother so much, Nanda hugged his bowl and followed, thinking to himself, "When we get to the gate, the Buddha will surely collect the bowl." But no, The Buddha kept walking, leaving the gate quite far. He did not look back. The bride Janapada Kayani suddenly felt vaguely worried, ran to the gate, and cried out in pain, "Dear Prince, come back!" The Buddha seemed to have neither heard nor seen. He still walked with dignity and majesty step by step forward. Prince Nanda heard his lover's earnest call. His heart fluttered and became numb. His feet moved forward, but his face turned away. But the Buddha remained relaxed and at ease as if nothing had happened. Arriving at Nigrodharma Park, the Buddha had just sat down when the Venerable Mahakassapa came to report that because there was construction going on here, there were several hundred monks who wanted to temporarily reside in forests, parks, or cemeteries. Venerable Sariputta said again that there were 30 or 40 young monks who wanted to help with some manual work so that the monastery could be completed quickly. Buddha said, "So it's reasonable, so the teachers know what they have to do." But Mahakassapa, how many dhammas are you currently receiving and maintaining? I don't remember clearly either. Since meeting the world-honored one and seeing the immortal Dharma, the disciple has only used 3 robes, not receiving any other robes. If they are damaged or torn, the disciple only goes to pick up cloth that people have thrown away in the cemetery, washed and dyed again. Regarding food, the disciples only go to ask for food and do not accept invitations from anyone else. When going to alms bowl, just go from house to house in order. Do not leave any distance. When eating food, just sit in one place, do not move. Just eat from the bowl, use as much as you have, don't accept extra food. Only reside in trees, forests, cemeteries, empty places or places designated by the Sangha. And the disciple only sits and does not lie down, even when sleeping and resting from then until now, world-honored one. So these are 13 dharmas. Very good, very rare, Mahakassapa. Buddha said that is called the highest level of momentum. From now on, you should guide those who want to live a solitary ascetic life like that. Depending on their ability, they can be of high level, middle level, or low level. All of these early momentum methods have the ability to burn and burn away afflictions, and they all have the ability to help monks live a life of few desires and contentment very effectively. Be an example to the monks who have learned later. Mahakassapa. Then turning to Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha said, and Sariputta, on behalf of the Tathagata, preached the Dharma to 2 rows of lay people, precepting dozens of new monks who had just become monks yesterday. Second, young monks can help with the work, but there are certain limitations. They should not dig holes, tunnels, or ditches. You should not cut down trees, cut branches, cut grass, pluck leaves, break flowers. Meaning anything that touches animal or plant life, monks should not do, are not allowed to do. The 2 venerables accepted the idea. The Buddha now turned his eyes to Prince Nanda, still patiently standing to the side, not daring to give the bowl back to the Buddha without him telling him, and said kindly, "Hey Nanda, do you want to live a monastic life like Tathagata and like those dignified, virtuous monks?" Nanda was as anxious as fire for fear of not being able to celebrate the wedding on time. But when the Buddha asked, because he respected him so much, he did not dare to refuse and nodded very reluctantly. Smiling quietly in his heart, the Buddha immediately told Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahakassapa to shave Prince Nanda's hair and beard, find enough robes and bowls, and then ordain him as a monk. So the bridegroom, half-brother of the Buddha, son of Queen Gautami, had to leave home on the day of the wedding. Although he was very sad and missed Lady Janapada Kayani very much, he just endured it. "I can't stand it. I don't dare say a word." From here, Nanda learned to live the life of a monk under the guidance of the Venerable Sariputta, not allowed to return to the royal palace, not allowed to visit or meet Princess Janapada Kayani anymore. The Buddha's seemingly reckless actions caused a stir in public opinion in the royal palace, spreading even outside the capital. Lady Gautami was very upset. King Suddhodana, thanks to his attainment of Siddhartha, had lightened the 2 strings of discontent and craving, so he thought that the Buddha had his reasons. At that time, the Venerable Karudai came to visit and talked for a long time with the king and queen. The Venerable gave many examples and metaphors to compare the life of bondage, affliction, and suffering of lay people with the noble, peaceful, and liberated life of monastics. Taking himself as an example, the Venerable said, For a poor proletarian monk like today, if he could exchange his previous royal life 1,000,000 times, he would not even bother. The Venerable also revealed how the realms of life and death, ups and downs, wandering uncertainly in lives, endure countless sufferings. Your Majesty is a person who has taken 2 steps on the path of immortality. Currently, there is only one more human life left to forever end that cycle of birth and death. Your Majesty should be happy for him. Nanda is the one. After that talk, the king felt light and peaceful. Queen Gautami is still sad, but because she believes so much in the Buddha's work, she only regrets that the throne has no heir. In the end, only the family of the Mandarin, the parents of Princess Janapadakayani, remained. They were very angry and saw this as an insult, a joke on the virtue of the daughter of a good family. Then, Venerable Kyūdai came again to be a messenger of peace. Thanks to his intelligence, courtesy, and clever language, the Venerable calmed down the girl's family. But as for Princess Janapadakayani, the entangled love threads have become so thick that no one can untangle them. King Suddhodana is over 90 years old this year, but he is still strong and sturdy. From the day he tasted the flavor of the Dharma, the king entrusted the management of the country to Prince Mahanam and his elders. As for him, he took the time to practice. Whenever he was free from work, the king wanted to listen to the Dharma, so he invited the Buddha and a few dozen people to the royal palace to place offerings. In the afternoon, many people from all walks of life came to listen. The king also sat cross-legged in the lotus position, keeping his mind pure, not missing a word or a word. After that, the king withdrew to the deep palace to meditate and walk, and he found a source of peace and happiness that had never existed in his life. On the 7th day, the Buddha had time to visit Rahula, the son he had only glimpsed when he was still a red baby. That day, the king and queen wanted to make an offering and place an alms bowl for the Buddha at the Eastern Palace. Because of their family nature, they only invited a few elders and trusted mandarins of the Sakya royal family. Lady Yasodhara deliberately dressed Rahula beautifully, with gentle colors, and looked neat and tidy from head to toe. When the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, and Bhikkhu attendant Nagita entered the flower garden, the princess saw from the upper floor. For the first time, Yasodhara had the opportunity to look at the Buddha so closely after many years of separation. Oh, how beautiful the monk's appearance in his coral-colored robe stands out among the rows of green trees. His every step is both majestic, peaceful, and carefree that no one in this world can imitate. It seems like every step is a pause. It seems like every step is an accomplishment. This person is no longer the Siddhartha of old. Seeing Lady Yasodhara engrossed in watching the stranger below walking closer, Rahula grabbed and tugged at her lemon-yellow sari. "Mom! Mom! Who is it, Mom?" As if suddenly awakened, the princess sat down with her child, smiling. "Do you see that monk in the front, looking like a majestic Brahma? See, who is that person who is so beautiful?" "It's my father! Yes." Then Yasodhara said softly, "You are my father, and you have a great, extremely precious treasure. Since the day you left, it's been nearly 8 years. I have never seen you in person. Run down to him, hold his hand, shake his robe and say, 'Father, I am your son. I am now a king. Tomorrow I will ascend the throne and rule a kingdom, beautiful and peaceful. Right now I need an inheritance. Mother said, you possess a priceless treasure, so please give it to me, because your property is my property.' Remember to say that, Rahula." Obediently, Rahula nodded, smiled widely, and ran down the stairs. Coming close, the boy innocently held the Buddha's hand, tugged at his robe, and spoke almost verbatim as his mother had told him. Buddha smiled, looked at the child with a round, bright face, and replied, "Yes, then Tathagata will give that inheritance to you." But in his mind the thought arose, he has been pampered since childhood, but does not show any clear personality, does not have any outstanding virtues. The good news is that he won't be so stubborn in the future. Then he lovingly held Rahula's hand and walked up to the old flower floor where everyone was waiting. After noon, the Buddha talked about the necessary and sufficient conditions to maintain family happiness. In general, the first is that husband and wife must truly love each other and accept each other's personalities, whether good or bad, favorable or unfavorable. Second, we must respect each other and not impose, be subjective or domineering. Third, we must pay attention to find ways to share material things with the parents of both families if they are in need. Fourth, the husband must give money to his wife, let her take care of all housework, accommodation, and activities as well as decide on daily expenses. The husband must know how to take care of his career and arrange outside work. Fifth, the husband should not forget to give gifts and jewelry to his wife when returning from a long trip or on anniversaries. On the contrary, the wife must know how to respect and honor those her husband respects, such as her husband's friends and relatives. However, what is called the best, highest, and most basic for the other 5 things to be fully achieved is transforming the way of looking, which is wisdom. The husband looks at his wife, the wife always looks at her husband with the same eyes. Green, always new, always without prejudice, without bias, without preconceived notions, always present clearly, not piled up or haunted by images of the past, of the future, or of the present that is just fleeting. Everyone is deeply familiar with the Dharma, so they contemplate and meditate, and it is not easy to immediately grasp the basics. Finally, someone asked about the policy of governing people, how it is related. What is the correlation between the Buddha's teachings in this world and the peace and happiness of everyone in the world? And if all men become monks, what will happen to the country and humanity? Can that be clearly explained through the category of secular morality? Buddha smiled and promised another time when he would explain that. When you understand and see it, you will be born into this world, but not out of this world. In this world, you will still be in this world because it is not attached to the afflictions and dust of the world. Saying 1 is not right, saying 2 is also not right. Everyone seems thoughtful. Buddha stood up and said goodbye. The boy Rahula seemed attached to the Buddha, so when he left the royal palace, he quickly ran after him, holding his hand in a friendly gesture. It was afternoon, the sun was a bit harsh. Rahula walked and hid in his shadow, saying very cutely and impressively, "Oh, just the shadow of a monk, how can it make me so peaceful and cool?" Sukhavadachaya samana. Seeing Rahula following the Buddha, no one stopped him. After walking for a while, Venerable Sariputta held Rahula's hand, and then a thought suddenly arose. World-honored one, the Buddhas of the past returned to visit their homeland. Is it difficult or easy for them to save their relatives? That depends on causes and conditions, Sariputta. The seeds of Dharma only take deep root in fertile soil with favorable environmental conditions. Venerable Sariputta understood. He suddenly thought of his family with traditional beliefs that were deeply ingrained in their blood and very difficult to shake. Returning to the park, the Buddha led Rahula into the incense room. When he had finished, he said, "Hey Rahula, Mom told you to ask for a precious inheritance. Now listen, wealth and material assets have a lot of suffering and little joy. It is also a place that nurtures greed, giving rise to disputes, suffering, afflictions, and many other attachments and consequences. Currently, Tathagata has a very large and precious spiritual inheritance. It only brings smiles, joy, peace, and liberation. Tathagata wants to give it to you. Will you accept it?" "Yes." Rahula clasped her hands politely. "I only want to receive the inheritance of joy." Buddha smiled. "To get that fortune, you must shave your head, wear robes, and carry a bowl like Tathagata, like Mr. Sariputta, like Uncle Nanda, and like everyone here. Do you agree?" "I agree." Then the Buddha told Venerable Sariputta to immediately perform the ordination ceremony for Rahula. Thus, Venerable Sariputta took on the task of teaching the little novice monk, and began to teach him how to wear robes, carry bowls, walk and stand, when to sleep and rest, how to speak, and how to ask questions in accordance with rules and etiquette. And it is hard to imagine that a prince with golden branches and jade leaves, accustomed to a pampered life in the palace, could adapt to the life of an ascetic. However, it is surprising that the novice Rahula does not remember his mother or anyone at the royal court, and was very happy in his new life, obedient, polite, and able to listen to his teacher's instructions. The next day, King Suddhodana, Queen Gautami, and Princess Yasodhara heard the news. Everyone was shocked. It was truly like a thunderbolt at the royal court. Prince Nanda just became a monk at the time of the wedding ceremony 4 days ago, and now Rahula too, he is still so innocent and small. The most miserable and sad person was Princess Yasodhara. Second was Mrs. Gautami. But when the two wanted to question the Buddha, King Suddhodana stopped them, saying, "Don't be hasty or impatient. Whatever a perfectly enlightened one does has its own cause and effect. Don't look at external phenomena, normal psychology, or personal feelings to judge an event. I believe absolutely in the Dharma, in my son's wisdom. He is now a Buddha. Never will a fully enlightened one perceive mistakes. You should understand that. Truly the heart and mind of a saint disciple." After calming the two ladies and everyone else, the king took a carriage alone with a few servants to Nigrodharma Park. Meeting the Buddha, the king began to reprimand quite gently. When the crown prince left the Golden Palace and Jade Palace, I was extremely sad, as was my beloved Queen Gautami. And Yasodhara is even more melancholy, sad, and painful. After spending 8 long years working as a monk, struggling, lonely, and having to sleep on my knees, it was not easy. Except for Yasodhara, there is no one with such courage and determination. Now it's Nanda's turn. I asked the world-honored one, what normal parent wouldn't feel heartbroken? The Nanda story had not yet subsided, and the whole palace lost Rahula, a pampered and loved child, was the only source of comfort for the two ladies. The love of a mother who has lost a child or a grandparent who has lost a grandchild is as if someone had cut the skin, cut the flesh, cut the tendons, ripped out the bones and marrow. Pausing for a moment, the king continued, "Luckily for both of you. The ladies are both wise. Those two soft hearts have the power of the Dharma to increase their strength, otherwise they would have collapsed. As for me, I have clearly seen that love and attachment give birth to suffering. Love and attachment give birth to bondage. Love and attachment lead to the flow of samsara, so that feeling is just like a gentle breeze blowing past and then gone. However, I would like to request the world-honored one thing. From now on, I will not issue an ordination ceremony for any child, especially a teenager, without the permission of their parents or family. Consent." The words presented with clear reason by the king, who had firmly stepped on the path of immortality, made the Buddha very happy. Immediately that day, the Buddha told Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Mahakassapa, to announce to all the monks that the king's request had become a widely promulgated law. After being completed, Nigrodharma Park, although not as large and elaborate as Truklam, became a living place for the congregation in the capital Kapilavatthu. Since then, it seems like every day there are people placing alms offerings. Every day there is one group or another coming to consult, learn, and take refuge. The Sakya royal family, bankers, union owners, are always the most generous donors and almsgivers. They also offered cloth, bowls, sitting utensils, recliners, all kinds of foot mats, floor coverings, water jars, face towels, bath towels, blankets. So the Buddha had to make them again. Determine some precepts, what should be accepted, what should not be received. For example, bhikkhus are only allowed to lie down on a tree stand and are allowed to use recliners made of grass and sedge mats, but are not allowed to use velvet, silk, brocade, cotton blankets, or long pillows. Each bhikkhu only has 3 robes and 1 bowl. Any excess robes and bowl must be given to someone else and stored in storage for the next one. Old, torn clothes must not be thrown away. They must be washed to make curtains to block the wind and walls. If they are too old and torn, they can be used as foot pads or towels to clean the floor. Sangha robes, foreign robes, cannot be too thick due to cotton or felt lining, should only be used to cover. How to avoid too warm but not too cold. Clothing cut and color must comply with general regulations. Look for tree roots and tree trunks to dye, not too light like the color of straw, but also not too dark like the color of cockroach wings. If iron bowls or wooden bowls are worn out, you have to find a way to smoke them and dye them again. Buddha allows monks to accept donors' invitations to receive food at their homes. As for the Venerable Mahakassapa and the monks who have received high, middle, and lower levels of Dhatuda, they are free to find a place to live alone. From now on, they are not bound by the activities of the congregation, except when there is a Sangha. Sangha, summoned. Venerable Sariputta memorized every word of the Buddha's precepts without missing a single thing. Dharma teachings, too, wherever, with whom, at whatever time, the Venerable listens, thinks, and contemplates. When needed, he can explain again, very widely, coherently, without leaving the basics, the core. During a week, the princes Mahanama, Ananda, Bhadia, Kimbila, Anuruddha, Bhagu, Channa, and even Devadatta came from Kolya to place alms bowls to offer to the Buddha and the Sangha. Then, the Buddha preached to them for 3 afternoons, and every day they take turns asking questions from the most basic points of the Dharma, all the way to concepts beyond language, that is, transcendental dharmas. They also asked about the metaphysical realms and the superior wisdom abilities that a monk can achieve. Buddha did not always answer in one way, but in many ways. Due to his unobstructed understanding, sometimes he answered the question immediately and directly, when he answered by asking back. Sometimes he answered by explaining the question more broadly and deeply. Sometimes he is silent or uses some mystical powers. Many times, the Buddha entrusted that responsibility to Venerable Sariputta. And at this point, the princes were truly amazed at the eloquent intelligence, erudite literary knowledge, as well as the fluent language of the one who was said to be their eldest disciple. Now the arrogance are gone, because they suddenly understand that, even if they study and listen all their lives, they cannot compare with the Buddha's right-hand man. However, Sakya's stubborn bloodline has been latent, lingering, smoldering for many lifetimes. They still have not taken refuge. 2 months later, before leaving Kapilavatthu to return in time to settle in Truklam for the rainy season, the Buddha gave an important sermon to the king and the whole court. This is also a Dharma session to explain lingering questions in people's minds. Buddha opened his deep voice, resounding like a bell. First, let's talk about people's governance policy. It must be said that there is no governance policy in this world that can be called perfect or good. Why so? Because when making policies, dynasties have established a dichotomous position, being defined in the categories rulers and ruled. When there are rulers and ruled, conflict and inequality in society will arise. That is the first failure with philosophical dualism. Next, what are the rulers, that is, the policymakers? Do they have true morals? Is it strict and loyal? Have a good, exemplary life? Or are they just people who are always dominated by greed, anger, ignorance, selfishness, full of lust, ambition for fame, fortune, and power? Is it possible that a good, perfect policy can be born from a group whose personality is not good, all human values and humanity are not perfect? That is the second failure in the sense of secular interdependence, which, to tell the truth, affects many people, affects the structural composition of the leadership hierarchy of every political institution on earth. This land. So ladies and gentlemen, people create policy. People are the deciding factor, and policy is interdependent. The Dharma that Tathagata has enlightened and preached is from people, by people, and for people, which means returning to the decisive factor for the perfection and goodness of all policies. A person who has liberated all pollution from the inside to the outside and is no longer immersed or bound by the temptations of life will always bring peace and happiness to himself and others. Such people in Tathagata's assembly are not only 100, 200, but also 1,000, 2,000, and there will be more in the future. People like that, they are here with you in this life, wearing robes, begging for alms, eating, drinking, and breathing. They transcend the world, appear in this world, and yet still exist in the middle of this earth. So if the statement is one or two, both are impossible. That is the truth, concrete, tangible, not the abstract, vague reasoning of polylogical, isolated epistemologies. You are knowledgeable people and wise people, so Tathagata also talks like talking to knowledgeable people and wise people. A policy that is called perfect and good in an absolute sense cannot exist in the relative world. In other words, the messengers of the Tathagata, those liberated people, if they lead, establish policies, and rule over all people, then that perfection and goodness also becomes relative and limited. Stop. The resistance here is also people with their separate karma, their collective karma, and their mixed good and bad minds from eternity. However, that becomes unthinkable because those who are already enlightened and liberated, even the holy king of Chakravarti, they do not do it. This is the third failure in the sense of relative values in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the phenomena of birth, existence, and death of all things, as well as the inner mind, draw out the law of impermanence and non-self of all dharmas. Therefore, nature is imperfect, unstable, unsatisfactory is a fact that cannot be changed. In that relative world, what is called value, perfection, and goodness is always understood as just a stage, a period, a ripple that both stays and disappears. The so-called peace and happiness of living beings in this world is just as fragile. Leaders and policymakers must at least have that wisdom, and then at least have all the necessary and sufficient qualities of humanity. And it is that person, through his relative intelligence and morality, who illuminates policy. And then, the policy will enlighten people for everyone else. In short, the leader who sets up policies must at least have the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. Better yet, they practice the 10 good deeds and uphold the 8 precepts. Then that country will be peaceful and happy. And when that is the case, there is no need to use cliches like loving the people, for the people, altruism, charity, or declarations with noble and beautiful words that are only empty shells, flamboyant, frivolous, filled with lies. Avoiding words to seduce people, to advertise from the street to the corner of the market. The Buddha's teachings that exposed the human mind could have created negative reactions, but no, everyone listened attentively. Prince Amitabha, Ananda's father, said, "Great, this is the path of virtue. This is the policy with the 10 royal dharmas of the holy Chakravartin kings that the world-honored one has explained so sublimely, eloquently, and extremely novelly. Grateful to the world-honored one, we have been able to expand our knowledge. It's not just about expanding knowledge." Prince Sukhadana, Mahanama's father, continued, "Literature is the outer shell. My heart and mind are now enlightened. Politics and policy are excuses. Buddha himself told us clearly that relationship. It is people who practice, depending on their level of achievement, that determines peace and happiness in this world." A high-ranking Mandarin sat far away and spoke, "World-honored one, there is not a word of his that we do not understand when we meditate. In this world and beyond we understand. People are interrelated with policies. Good people create good policies make good people. The two are inherently interrelated, reciprocal, and interdependent. This is beautiful. That is beautiful. That is the unchangeable truth. We get it. However, there is one more question in your mind," the Buddha said. "That is, all young monastics live a celibate life. The problem of maintaining the bloodline, the problem of the existence of the country, of humanity. How will the type be interpreted? Actually, you don't need to worry that far, because there will never be that all amount. Not everyone can become a monk without having a predestined relationship from many generations. The monks in Tathagata's order are always a minority, and thanks to that minority, there is a pure and gentle life, creating a positive factor to maintain and develop spiritual values for this world. Without it, that is, when bad things happen. If evil spreads, humanity will perish. We understand. So is the Buddha's teaching still related to the rise and fall of a dynasty? That's right. Buddha said, it is also an important condition among other conditions of prosperity and decline. If a country wants to be strong, prosperous, and have all its people live peacefully and happily, it must fully meet the following 7 conditions. Firstly, people like to gather in large numbers and have fun with each other, which means they know each other and love each other. Come together, look at each other with sympathetic eyes. Second is to always live together in a spirit of solidarity, unity at meetings, solidarity at work, solidarity in all duties and obligations, solidarity to reach noble ideals. Third, at the dynasty, leaders should not issue new laws that modify, change, or go against traditional moral values. Fourth, we must know how to respect our elders, and must listen to their experienced and wise teachings. Fifth is to respect women. This means that women and girls in the country are not forced to live in slavery, rape, or coercion in marriage or in the family. Sixth, we must know how to maintain temples and communes. Must know how to make temples and communes glorious. Do not neglect the traditional rituals that have been respected by our ancestors. Seventh, we must know how to create opportunities, protect, and enthusiastically support the Dharma, for arhats to propagate the Dharma, so that those who have not yet come will want to come. and those who have come and lived there are safe and sound. Thus, among the 7 conditions, the 7th condition is the most important because it includes the 6 prerequisites. With the 7th condition, the other 6 conditions will be strengthened, grown, and prosperous. After that Dharma session, the congregation was very satisfied. When the Buddha left, they discussed with each other that each Sakya family should choose one person to become a monk in his teachings. Therefore, during the next week, many royal and noble children came to ask to become monks. Dear ladies and gentlemen, you have just listened to the video about the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, adapted from the work A Life, a Sun and Moon by Master Geoy Duck. This video series will be broadcast at 7 p.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the YouTube channel Buddhist Story. We sincerely thank you for watching. To not miss the next episodes, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. If you find the content useful, please share this video with your relatives and friends. All your comments are very valuable to us. Please leave comments below the video so we can discuss and share together. Thank you, and see you again in the next episodes of the video series, The Life of Buddha Shakyamuni.